We miss you guys. I actually told Jason he's not allowed to take off, but he did anyway. Bye. Today's parasha is Toldot. This is a really packed parasha. It's about blessing. It's about curses. It's about leadership. It's about experiences that shape who we are. It's about a mom who loves a son and dislikes another. It's about a father who loves a son and dislikes the other. It's about digging wells when you can't find a home, that you just keep searching. When you don't know if you're in the right spot and you don't feel comfortable where you're at, you get up, pick up, and move and dig another well. When the enemy's at your foothills, you keep God in your sights to survive. There's just so much packed right into this parasha about Esav and Yaakov and Yitzchak and his fight to see who's going to take over the lineage of Abraham and the blessing that Abraham received from God. But what I want to do here is I want to talk about the experiences that shape us, and why we experience what we do on this journey that we're in. And I'll use Yaakov and Esav as a correlation. But let's kind of take a look in the rearview mirror for this week. And this week we had some tragedy happen in Israel. And the tragedy that occurred was there was 4 rabbis that were brutally murdered by terrorists. There was a Druze police officer that was murdered by terrorists in a synagogue. And this is the fight of Israel for 3,000 years. The Jewish people have fought to survive. The Jewish people fight every day. They never stop fighting to survive. Never stop fighting to live on. And the experience of the past defines the future generations. There's no experience that a Jew has today that will not be felt by those in the future generations. We have a different view here in the United States. In Anglo-Saxon, Protestant America, and the pagan world, really they hold the keys to their own future. There's really no tie that bonds them to anyone else. If you are, I was told I was at dinner in Detroit this week, and I was with some colleagues of mine, and there was a waitress that was serving us, and the one colleague of mine asked, what she's doing here in Detroit, because Detroit is a dead, absolute, decrepit city, bankrupt. It's a train wreck. The waitress said, well, I grew up here in the suburbs, and she's like, I have nothing really holding me here. I have my mom and my sisters, but she said, I'm 35 years old. I have a college degree. I'm not married. I don't have kids. My life's really not what I thought it would be. And he looked at her and he said, well, what are you waiting for? And she said, what do you mean? He goes, well, get out of here. Go somewhere you can start your life and become who you want to be. And she said, well, I've actually thought about, moving to Florida. I have a friend down there that said she'd help me get under my feet. He goes, sell everything you got tomorrow and move. What are you waiting on? Go do it. Don't seize the day. He's giving her encouragement. It was the right thing to do, but she really has no, when she was talking, she had no past that kept her there. and her future was really only for herself. And if you think about that, that's really how the world thinks, you know. Well, what am I going to do? I remember one time my mom, you know, we were talking about my job, and my mom told me on the phone, I just don't want you to get a job that takes you away from here. And I'm, you know, I never responded to that, but you know what, I would never take a job that took me away from where I'm at. Like, this is who I am. Like, I wouldn't even think about moving to another country or another state. Rosh Hashanah's here, my family's here, my friends. I've got everything. My whole past has defined my future, right? The people that are around me, my friends, my family, define who I am. And I can't leave them. And my life is going to be a reflection for the future generations to come, so I have to establish those roots and dig a well. You know, when you dig a well to stay. And we've dug wells. You know, just like in the parashah we read where Yitzchak has his people digging wells where they set up camp and they maintain their lives there and they build their communities. You know, we're building communities here. The Jewish people do that. They set up and dig wells and build communities. And they don't think about leaving those communities. They think about, this is it. I mean, for generations to come, they'll be here. And the only reason they would leave is because they're going to be on a mission field, you know, and we're going to send them on a mission. But this is their home. This is the well that they live at. You know, there's no other place. Israel is a well for all Jewish people that we can return to at any point in time, you know, and live with our fellow friends and family and enjoy the history that was developed by our forefathers. I mean, it's just a different way of thinking, and the world doesn't really let the experiences of others define their futures. They say, I'll let my experiences define my journey. But in Judaism, it's a completely different concept. The people of Israel have suffered for 3,000 years, which is part of the lot that they have as a result of being the people of God. And that suffering defines who the future generations of Jewry will be. Who the future generations of people that follow the God of Israel are going to be. That defines their journey. We are Messianic Jews. So how do you feel like you're connected to world Jewry? World Jewry may look at you and say, well, you're not a part of it. But you yourself know that you feel a part of it, if you're Messianic and truly feel that you're a Messianic Jewish person. I mean, there's a lot of debate on, am I Jewish? Am I not Jewish? I wasn't born that way. It was my last name, this or that. Who cares? It's what you believe. You know, in a court of law, the culpable mental state of a person is determined based on what that person believes to be true. So if a person is assaulted, a guy spat on that guy. The person that got spat on feels like he was assaulted. It's the way he feels. He believes. If you believe you are a part of Jewry, then you are. If you believe you're not, then you will not be. And you won't be able to understand the message that God is speaking to the world Jewish community. Because I believe there's a message that's trending throughout the Jewish community. And that message is, one, we have to rely on God. Our suffering is the result of our own is the result of our reliance upon ourselves and not the reliance upon God. But for history, throughout generations, you're going to see the suffering of the Jewish people from slavery to slavery to slavery to slavery. Okay? And always overcoming, always fighting, always being aggressive. I read a story about Yaakov and Esau, Jacob and Esau. Why did Jacob like Esau so much? I mean, why did Yitzchak like Esau so much? Because what father doesn't want to hand over the kingdom to the son who's strong, who will conquer, who will expand his tents, who will expand his land? What father doesn't want the strong son to be the leader of his future generations? Yaakov, you know what he did? He was a mama's boy. He sat behind a desk and he read books. He didn't fit in Esau's clothing. Esau was tall, big. He went out. They were twins, but they were different. The one was a hunter. He was a man's man. And the other was a mama's boy. Who wants that? He's going to lead the free nation of Israel? He's going to lead Israel? This guy, Yaakov? Rivka thinks so. Yitzchak says, no, he's not going to lead the nations. Esau's going to lead the nations. So they have to craft a plan. Because Rivka knows, because Rivka's heard from God. So it's interesting, when you read it in the Hebrew and you take the text of the rabbis, okay, the story that happens. Esau comes to Yitzchak after the blessing has been given. He says, was there blessing for me? And he cries aloud, it says. And in there it says that Barhuni, I believe is what the word is used. Barhuni is Baruch he. He blessed him. Okay? But in the syntax, according to this writing, it sounds like Yitzchak says, really? Jacob did that? He took your birthright? And not only took your birthright, but he dressed himself as you and came to me? That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome that he did that. Well, what do you mean? Why would Jacob think that's awesome? It's awesome because Jacob wanted to know and believe, Yitzchak wanted to know and believe that Jacob could lead the nation of Israel. That he was strong enough to take what he needed to take. Because Esau was the one that would take. Yaakov was the one that was the mama's boy. Well, he can't take anything. He doesn't hunt. He doesn't do anything. Right? Mom cooked his meals. Esau cooked his own meals. In fact, when he hunted, he cooked it. Rivka had to cook the meal that Yaakov took to Yitzchak and say, this is the porridge I made for you. Rivka had to make that meal because Yaakov had no idea what he was doing. He's like, Mom, I don't know how to cook. Make it good. But the story says that Jacob, the way it is read, that Jacob thought to himself, wow, awesome. Yaakov really is the one. He's going to be okay. That, you smart little witty guy, even though it was deception and it sounds evil and it seems wicked to us, it was necessary to achieve the goal that God needed to happen. And it was necessary for Yitzchak to even recognize that. But the interesting thing is that, he sold his, Esau didn't care about his birthright. He sells his birthright off, right, for porridge. He looks at Yaakov and says, I'm famished, I need this. I need food. I need porridge. I need this. And Jacob is witty enough and smart enough to say, well, if you need it that bad, I'll sell it to you for your birthright. And they're twins. So the one has the other by seconds. Jacob holding on to the foot. And so you can imagine these twins. Their twins are fighting all the time. We think of Esau as the older brother, but really, in reality, they were born within seconds of each other, and they're twins. Okay, so Jacob probably always felt like, I'm the boss, and Esau's like, no, I came out first. You know the story, but you were holding my heel. That fight, that friction was always occurring. So and Jacob always seemed to be on the heels of Esau, in the eyes of Isaac. Esau was always the one that was achieving. He was probably the one that did well in sports, right? The one that did well in sports. And Jacob was the one that had the mind. So he had the brains and he had the brawn. Brains always outwit brawn. It's just reality. That's just how it goes. So the story is interesting how it works, and that's how, quite frankly, the Jewish people were defined. The whole nation of Israel was birthed out of out of a deception. And the story is that Jacob was born, this bookworm, mama's boy, but then he was reborn. He was born again in the eyes of Isaac as the leader of the nations of Israel. So they have to have this experience. They're going through all these experiences. And Jacob wrestles with God. His name Israel, meaning wrestles with God. Jacob began his whole experience. He began his whole journey with the wrestling. Holding the foot of his brother on the way out of the womb. Fighting his entire life to get the blessing of his father. Realize that Esau was 40 years old. And his father had not blessed either of them yet to be the leader of the nation of Israel. His father waited until he was about to die to do so. So these were grown men in their 50s, right? This is like, my dad and his brother fighting right now for a birthright. This isn't boys, young boys, 18, 19 years old, trying to fight for a blessing. This is grown men. And his whole life, he struggled, he wrestled. He wrestled with his experience. And not only that, it brought him into the wilderness, it brought him into the desert, and you'll see in the future parashas where he's wrestling with God. His hip gets popped out of joint. His whole life is going to be a struggle. And the experience of Jacob dictates the future of the generations of Israel. Understand that the father of Israel, Jacob, Yaakov, is dictating the future struggle and experience of the Jewish people. Israel, the name, one who wrestles with God. For 3,000 years, Israel has wrestled with God. And they maintain that. And we, as a people, still wrestle with God. Believers in Yeshua wrestle with God. We wrestle between the spirit and the flesh. Not against powers and principalities of the air or of this flesh, but the spirits we wrestle against. And we continue to wrestle. Why? You will always wrestle if you are seeking God. And you're a part of Israel. To be a part of Israel means that you are one who wrestles with God. And that wrestling has to define the future generations. What you experience, what you go through, will define for the future generations how they will experience. And so, you always hear it. Well, he has to learn it on his own. I can't teach him that. Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, the goal of the people of Israel is to teach people what we've done wrong as a people, and teach future generations what to avoid, so that they don't experience the wrongness. Okay, so you're birthing in the next generation a new idea, a new way of looking at the world, and you're hoping to shape the worldview. But we have to never forget the experiences of those that precede us. Oftentimes, we just think about ourselves. We're very selfish people. But these experiences for other people, of the children of Israel, of the sufferers, of ones who wrestle with God, they force us to come to terms with the reality of how closely we teeter on the edge of experiencing the very same outcome of the generations before us. Imagine. Just in the recent past, we had Nazi Germany. With this man, Hitler, who created this Third Reich. He was, in World War I, a war hero. His entire battalion that Hitler was a part of had a death rate of 120%. You know what that means? The way they calculate the rates of a battalion is that the number of people that have to get replaced from the original squadron. 120% of the people that were part of the original squadron had to be replaced. So the number of deaths that occurred in that battalion were 100% of the numbers of the original squadron plus 20%. And they replaced all those people. But Hitler remained because he was one of the original. He was a war hero. He was a vehement warrior. And he knew that he was something great because he thought, I survived. Look, no one else survived, but I did. He felt he was a god. Everyone else dies around me, but I live. So he builds this Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany is sweeping Europe, and it takes men like Winston Churchill and others that decide, they're not going to this isn't going to happen. We're going to rise against this force, and we're going to die at the hand of this nasty force. We're not going to give up. We're not going to falter. We're going to stand firm. Well, you know what? Just generations back, this guy kills 12 million people and systematically murders them in a final solution. And now we have a similar thing rising called ISIS that nobody's even talking about right now. And that's the experience of just, decades ago. We were just here. And we've got this regime that's building momentum and building momentum and building momentum because they have a singular message. And that singular message is driving them toward a singular goal. That's how people bind together. They bind together to a message. And we have to remember the past so that it doesn't repeat itself in the future. My God, there's still people walking the earth that have numbers on their arms from camps. And we've got people in the Middle East that are cutting heads off of people, even now. Gathering armies and killing armies of men. And we're ignoring it. The same that we did in World War II. We're ignoring it. It's crazy to think that we as a people cannot recognize the lessons of the past, but we don't. We do not recognize the lessons of the past. Because why? Because we are a people that are selfish and focused on our own gain. Not on the gain of the community. The Jewish people will never forget what happened to them. And they will fight to survive and never allow what happened then to happen again. And that will never ever leave them because they are focused on the community, not on the individual. The people of Israel are focused on the community and not on the individual, which is where we should all be. Focused on the community of Israel, on those who follow the Messiah. Fight for the faith. We teeter on the edge of this very same outcome of the generations before us, regardless of our advancements or our global thinking. That we're a global world. No matter how free we can make our minds to embrace the world and the cultures around us, that very same freedom can become the shackles that chain us and produce the belief that we have a superior understanding above others. The freedom that we think that, we understand the world better than other people and that the world should be different. I mean, quite frankly, I'm not going to get into politics, but I mean, we can't think that our concepts, our ideas are the best and force them. That very same freedom is what makes you think that you are better or above everyone else. And the moment you begin to think you're better or above someone else is the moment you begin to suppress others. Because you begin to think they're weaker than you. That's what happened. Hitler won in World War I. He was a warrior. And he thought to himself, I have something. have something that no one else has. And then he starts to look about his life. Think about this. He took his experiences. And he's looking back on his experiences in life. And he's saying, you know, my life has been negatively affected by these Jewish people. And he's taking his experience and defining his future. And his future then becomes the future of everyone in Europe. And it's war. He didn't go to art school because of a Jew. He couldn't get a bank account because of a Jew. The Jewish people are suppressing it. The Jewish people have to be gone. Oh, by the way, as they're corralled into these camps and we tell them how to work and live because they're no better than cattle, sooner or later he begins to think, well, you know what? They are just like cattle, and we slaughter cattle. So why don't we slaughter them? And everyone's numb to it. It's okay. You're numb to it. Conscience became seared of good men that probably went home, fed their children, loved their kids, anticipated a good home for their children, a good college education, to become great, to do well in the world. I mean, they wore that flag on their arm. And they walked into camps and slaughtered men and women. But they, at home, were great men. How could they do such a thing? That's the world we live in. A lesson that's threaded throughout this parashah reflects the reality that our human condition forces experiences that shape our future without thought or reason. We simply just journey down the path of our experience and we embrace it as if it's our destiny. Whether good or bad, we settle into what comes our direction and we become that very thing that experience forces us to become. We have no choice. It's what I have. It's the lot I've been given. Look at my experience in my life. How can I change it? It's who I am. It's what I have. We settle into it. We settle into what experience makes us become. That's like the children of Israel saying, the world hates us. They want us to die. We should allow them to kill us all. Let's go. Let's stand in line. That's the lot we've been given. Let's go stand in line. No, now we fight. Because we know that experience, the experience of the past, is not what is intended for our future. Because we have a God that has told us what our future is to be. So we have to fight. The families of the rabbis and of the Druze police officer that were murdered by these terrorists this week in Israel are forced to live with an experience that will shape their worldview forever. Forever. Netanyahu comes out, he says, I encourage you, I implore you all, do not react to this. He says that to the people of Israel. Do not go about killing. He anticipates that all of them will go kill every single Palestinian they can get their hands on. That's what he's anticipating. He's thinking, oh no, we're going to have a mass murdering, or a mass killing, I should say, of vengeance upon Palestinians. So he says, I implore you, I ask you, please hold and keep restraint. And I promise you, he says, these men will come to justice. But their experience defined them as killers. And they're not killing because they're innately wicked. They're killing out of what do you call that? What do you call that when you get crazy? Yeah, you're in a court of law and you didn't murder that guy. You killed, passion. It was a crime of passion. So these guys, they want to live. They want to live forever. They want their children to have a world to live in. This poor Druze police officer, who's not even Jewish, but he stood in that doorway of that synagogue, as a police officer, and he fought those terrorists, and he shot at those terrorists. And this one terrorist was coming out of the synagogue, and he came close point blank range and shot him, and he succumbed to his wounds shortly after. He was taken to the hospital. But he's not even Jewish. He's from the Druze culture that's been in Israel for many, 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 many years, that claim that they're from the descendants of Jethro, the father of Abraham. They're a monotheistic people that follow the Noahide laws because Jethro shared those laws with Abraham and everyone else. And this guy fought as if he was a family member. Imagine the whole Druze community. No one wants to attack them. There's 100,000 of them in the world. I mean, who wants to take them out? Now they've been the victims of terrorism. The whole worldview changes. Thinking about this parashah forces us to begin thinking about what makes people become who they are. Is it genetic? Is it based on a measure of wickedness or holiness delivered to us at birth? Is it simply the brain chemistry and how it reacts to situations that come in contact with? Is it personal? We spend a significant amount of our lives at work and at home trying to understand why people see through the eyes that they see through, why we cannot all see from the same lens. In fact, when we read the Word of God, it has many different meanings depending upon your experience in life situations. I'm reading a book where one of the great leaders of the world, says that he reads the Bible, and this guy's long gone; he's dead. But he says he reads the Bible for education and to learn, but not for religion and not for faith. And he said basically that every nation creates God to be who they desire God to be based on their experience. God is the God of many nations, he says. It depends on that nation's experience on who God is. Well, that's funny. Because, quite honestly, some of that sounds realistic. You define who you decide who you want God to be based on the experience that you're in. Think about Christianity. And this is a point that this leader makes. I always thought Jesse Ventura made this comment on his own, but he didn't. He got it from this leader. Jesse Ventura says that Christianity is a crutch for weak-minded people. This gentleman says that Christianity, when the crutch of Christianity is gone, these weak people will be forced to learn how to become strong. That's what he says. Because if you think about it, in today's modern Christianity, there's a lot of poverty. There's a lot of poverty. And the people that are impoverished are crying out to God to give them blessing so they don't have poverty. And rather than focusing on getting a job, and rather than focusing on developing their skill sets in the world so that they could go out and make a living for themselves, they focus on praying that God rains down a blessing. I watch television, and on television there's pastors, and I watch them. And these pastors will tell people that God wants to bring abundance on you and ask them to donate on their credit cards. Donate on your credit card for people that are maxed out on credit cards. They have no money. Flat out, one guy had a mic into another guy's face, and he said, "I'm flat broke. I've maxed out all my credit cards. I'm about to be evicted from my home. My mortgage is closing. I have no job. I have nothing. The pastor had the audacity to look at him and say, you get that maxed out credit card and you swipe it here and you put a deposit down on your blessing. What? What? I mean, read the parable of the sower. Read the parable of the sower. The one who does nothing gets nothing. Go out and work. Teach him how to dig out. Don't teach him how to put more in, dig out. I mean, it's train wreck. But your experience defines who you want God to be. We have to eliminate that and understand who God is and what He wants us to be. Not who we want Him to be for us, but what He wants us to be for Him on the earth, because our goal, our job, our mission is to bring God down to the earth and make an abode for Him. Not tell God what He will be to us. Can we ever come to a common truth? It's like, reading the Bible. It has many different truths depending upon your vantage point. Many different truths. You can look at it very Jewish. You can look at it very Christian. You can look at it very apostolic. You can look at it very Baptist. Some people that are in denominations don't even view the Bible from their lens. They only spit out their denominational doctrines. That's what they learn. And it's smart on the side of the pastors and the leaders. It's very smart to do that. It keeps everybody focused on the same thing. They have one mantra, they have one message, and they're all focused and marching toward that one mantra and message. It's very good. I'm telling you, the world isn't that black and white. It's very, very gray. God is black and white, but the reason it's gray for us is because we can't understand everything. We have to listen closely to the voice of God. And we are wrestling with Him. When you wrestle with God, that's not black and white. That's gray. And it could be uncomfortable. And He's going to knock your hip out of joint. The reality is that every doctrine that man has derived is simply that, man-derived. Doctrines that we've created are exactly that. We created them. Based on our ideas. Based on our experience. Based on the background of that man or the men that decided on those specific truths. The 13 principles of the Jewish faith. What do you think? You think God made those? The 13 principles of the Jewish faith. Maimonides, great man, right? In the history of Jewishness. Man-derived. 13 principles of Jewish faith are man-derived. God-inspired, perhaps, but nonetheless man-derived. The tenets of the apostolic faith fits the same way. The decrees of the Baptist denomination fits the same way, and so on, and so on, and so on. And we all have had experiences that shape who we become and what we desire to follow. Unfortunately, in order to lead and share a message of truth, based on your experiences, a leader must have followers. And in order to have followers, you must have a similar experience in life. Otherwise, the people you are speaking to will not resonate with the message that has been crafted out of your experience. For you to follow someone, it's because you have a similar experience, and that person shows leadership within that experience. A leader isn't a leader without followers. The only reason I'm going to follow him is that I have a like mind. Think about the world leaders. When you go and vote, who do you vote for? When you walk into a voting booth, who do you vote for? We just recently did. You vote for people that you think like you do. This person thinks like me, so I'm going to vote for him, and I don't like that guy. Right? The world hates Obama right now. Amnesty. Just let 5 million, illegals into our country. You're the emperor in chief. You're not allowed to make laws. Maybe all true. All based on your understanding, all based on what you want to believe, all based on your experience. His experience has been different. So he's driving toward what his experience was. That's all. He's not trying to destroy anything, I don't think. What I think he's doing is he has his own experience in life. And based on his experience, these people who are trying to make a life for themselves should be allowed to do so. Because look what I had to go through. That's what I'm thinking, right? Right or wrong, I don't really care. Do I agree with it? Doesn't matter. Right here, talk to me outside of Shabbat. But my agreement is going to be based on my experience. You're going to follow somebody, whether or not they like you, whether or not they're like you, or not like you. People may see you as important to the world community, but they will not feel inclined to follow your message without having had your experience. What is your message? What is your message? What message do you bring to the world? You. You're not here listening to me talk. You're here trying to understand what your message is. What are you leaving? Yitzchak laid on his deathbed, awaiting to leave a blessing that was passed down from his father to him, and from him to... He was going to leave the leader of the future of what God had created. What are you going to leave? And what message do you have? We have a message to share. All of us do. It's the message of the coming of the kingdom. Right? Not everybody believes in that. I mean, that's like, seriously, we sound like aliens in the normal world. But you know what we do? We surround ourselves with people that are like us. So when we talk to each other, we just make each other like, oh yeah, oh. And we believe that, yeah, this is truth. But then when you go out into the world, because I'm in it every day, and nobody believes what I believe. I am an alien. An absolute alien to these people. How could you believe in that? How could you think like that, But prior to my experience of being in that environment, I would have thought that everybody really has this foundation. Because I was only around people that had the foundation. I never went out and really dealt with anything else, And what I did on my own, I stuck to myself, and I would share with other people, and they would listen to me. But as a kid growing up and in college, all kids are seeking. Well, when you get into the manhood, everyone's made their decisions. And there's more people that have made decisions to follow the things not of God than there are people that made decisions to follow God. And I'm surrounded by that. It's like Lot and Sodom. He's an alien. Men lie with men, and women lie with women, and then there's groups of them together, and then there's all kinds of stuff going on here. That's normal. What? For you to say that's not normal, you're wild. You're not a part of this. Get out of here. Why are you even here? I'm going to take your daughters. Give me your daughters. We're going to teach them how to live their lives. Come on. You got to loosen up, Lot. It's a different world. It's a different perspective. You're not normal. And if you think you are, you're crazy. This isn't normal. What I mean by normal, it's not normal to the world. But you have a message. And the children of Israel, Isaac, The story in the parasha. Isaac lies to Avimelech. He tells Avimelech that my wife is my sister. Why? It says in the Bible that Avimelech saw Yitzchak caressing intimately Rivka. And Avimelech immediately calls Yitzchak and he says, what on earth? She's your wife, isn't she? And he's like, well, yeah, I thought you were going to kill me. She must have been a smoke show. Because he was freaking out that he was going to die over this lady, right? So she was a smoke show. And he said, I thought you were going to kill me. No. Now I have to decree that I'm not going to molest you or your wife. No one can molest you or your wife. I have to decree that. Because you're of God. So then, Yitzchak goes out. It's exposed. Rivka and Yitzchak are together. He goes out, he farms the land, and he receives 100-fold for what he worked. He digs wells. He digs more wells. He gains power. Avimelech says, whoa, you're getting way too strong. You got to get out. You got to get out of here. So he kicks him out. And then he goes and he does his thing. He's building more wells. He gets in fights with like 3 or 4 wells. He gets in fights over the wells. You know what he does? He doesn't fight. He names it, a name, and then he moves on to a new well. He's like, I'm not going to stay here and fight. Well, then all of a sudden, you see Avimelech and his leader of the army show up, and they say, we want to make a treaty with you because we know God is in you. We know God is with you. Well, how? He's just digging wells. But all of a sudden, he wants to make treaties with the guy. But that whole thing, when we read it, we think, wow, look how blessed Isaac was. Isaac probably felt like he was in hell. He's hiding from Avimelech and everyone else that Rivka's his wife. And then they find out that it's his wife. And then he goes out and he tries to do something good for his family. And he gets kicked out of where he lives in. And he's fighting for wells. And he gets fights and kicked out of those wells. And then, his life was a mess. But we read it like, what a blessed man he was. You're going to be like Isaac. No, he fought. His own wife, Rivka, the smoke show, she deceived him. Imagine the fights they had. I mean, he probably was like, what on earth is going on? This is a mess. His experience shapes who he is. It shapes who he wants his son to be. He knows that his son has to be strong. He knows that his son has to take over. I mean, he's living during the time of Nimrod in the Tower of Babel and all of these crazy people. And it's said that Esau was the one who actually kills Nimrod. Because he wants his garments. And so Yaakov says, Esau, he's the man. Look at him. I mean, he can take people out. He can win. He can beat Nimrod. His experience defined who he wanted to be, who he wanted his sons to be. Life is a fight, and you needed a fighter. But his message was skewed. You understand? His message was off. But Rivka heard the message because she was listening to the voice of God. Rivka knew the voice of God, so she was listening to the message of God, and she had to drive him to do what God had required. What is your message that you're giving to the world? People are looking at you. People do see you. People are watching you. Everything you say, everything you do, people are watching. People are saying that they're these weird, they're messianic. And maybe some of you don't even tell the world you're messianic. Maybe you just think it's easier not to do that because it confuses. No. I would say do it. And welcome to wrestling with God. Welcome to Israel. Welcome to Israel. Somebody doesn't like you in the world because of what you believe? Welcome to Israel. Welcome to the struggle, because we're all in it. 3,000 generations of suffering. You don't choose to be this. We do. We choose it. All the way to the point where we want it so bad that we're asking them to sell the birthright for porridge. We'll give you porridge and give us a birthright. Birthright is so important. But the common thread that ties all Jews together is the fact that they are Jews. Everyone is a descendant of the family from the tribes of Israel that suffered and died and had the resolve to carry on regardless of the pain that one generation experienced. And they wanted to teach the next generation that you must not forget. As we said, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants will never understand what makes the heart of the Jew beat around the world. They'll never get it. Why do you even get involved with that kind of stuff? I was on the highway. I was on the highway driving to work, and a buck deer jumps out onto the median, and it's like, you see it come up, and you're like, oh no, someone is going to get so jacked up. And this thing comes out, and it goes right behind a car that's in front of me, and nails. This car in the middle lane just nails this thing. And it's like a 900-pound buck. I mean, it's the biggest thing ever. It flies up in the air in front of my truck, and I'm kind of slowing down. I'm like, oh, no. And it's going on the highway, and it slams into the median, and it's flipping and flopping, and it's trying to get up and run. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to pull over and shoot it. So I go to pull over because I'm going to shoot it and put it out of its misery. And I look to my right, and the lady that hit the deer, for whatever reason I didn't even think, but the lady that hit the deer, the whole front of her car collapsed in. All airbags went out. I mean, we're going 65, 70 miles an hour. I mean, this is no joke, right? She pulls over to the third lane. I'm in the fast lane. She goes to the slow lane. She stops in the middle of the slow lane. And she starts to try to get out of her car. And I scream, stay in your vehicle. And she's going, no. She's totally delirious. Completely afraid. Stay in your vehicle. And I whip my truck around on the middle of the highway. And I face everybody. And I pull out in front because I'm going to stop, I'm going to stop traffic because she's going to die. So I pull out in front, and I park my car at an angle, and I jump out of my car, and I run over to the door, and I grab her door, which was stuck, and I pull her door back as hard as I can pull it back. She jumps out and starts to run. And no joke, traffic didn't care about me. They're going 100 miles an hour past us. They don't care. They care less. She starts to run because she's completely delirious. And I run and grab her, and I pull her back to the side. I go, no, come on, stay over here. Take her to the side, and she's doing this, like a leaf, like everywhere. And I'm like, calm down, are you okay? Are you hurt? Are you injured? She can't even respond. Her voice is shuddery. I calm her down, wrap my coat around her. She's fine. But I just saved a life in my mind. I just saved a life. She was going to die that day because she was going crazy. Her experience was it just completely diluted her. So the cops come, they show up. We turn around, and I go back to work, and I'm on the phone with my dad. I'm telling him the story. because I told him I was playing cop. And so then he's my witness. I'm driving up and I go, dude, I think there's a guy getting attacked by a pit bull. Remember I said that to you? I'm getting off the highway. There's this guy getting attacked by a pit bull. And I go, what the heck? Is that his dog or what? And I go, it looks like the guy's getting attacked by a pit bull. And Dad's like, well, get to work, you know. Well, no kidding you, I feel terrible, right? I feel terrible. I say, no, I got to ask that guy. So I turn around, I go, and the guy's still, he's doing this to the dog. And the dog's going at him. So I roll my window down and I say, hey, is that your dog? He's like, no, it ain't my dog. I'm getting attacked by this dog. So I'm thinking, I am going to get to use my gun today. So I get out. And I run over there and I'm like, get out of here. Get out of here. The dog runs away because he didn't like his odds. No, it's 2 against 1. Guy's arms are tore up. He had a leather jacket on. Dog got his arms. I just saved that guy's life. He could have been knocked down by that dog, throat ripped out, and he was like 70 years old. I mean, it wasn't a kid. I mean, he's like 70 years old. So we call the dog warden, tell the dog warden, hey, you got a loose dog. It's a black pit bull. It's probably rabid. It's trying to attack this old man. Is the old man there? I said, yeah, he's here. He's like, well, can he stick around and we'll take his information? And I said, you want to stick around and wait for the dog warden? He goes, I ain't staying around here. That dog can come back. I was like, well, you can do what you want, buddy. So go have a good day. He's like, I am going to have a good day now. You know, he walks away. But what if I didn't stop? What if I just decided not to get involved? Because that's what the world says. That doesn't involve me. Stay out of that. That doesn't involve me. Right? Don't worry about that. That doesn't involve you. You know, all those people that are going 100 miles an hour past this woman on the highway, that doesn't involve me. I don't care that she's probably, bones are broken, maybe dead in the car. It doesn't matter. I'm going 100 miles an hour past them. That doesn't involve me. But it involves us. Could have saved a life. Could have saved 2 that day. Been awesome. I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. Doesn't matter. What matters is the experience that shaped me. And the message that I bring. That good people are there. They exist. The world isn't as wicked as it seems. But we have to teach the next generations that you must not forget. Here, let me see here. So I've taught in the past, and I continue to keep this message, and I feel this way about my kids, and I think that when I started having children, that's kind of when it started happening for me. But I realized that my experiences that I have today really do define the generations of tomorrow. And those generations are the ones that I lead, the ones that I teach. And the ones I lead and teach are my children. I mean, you guys can listen and hear what I have to say, and that's great. And if you believe in it and want to follow it, that's up to you. But the reality is that I have children, and those children are going to have children. And those children are going to have children. And they're going to remember their grandfather. And they're going to remember their great-grandfather. And they're going to remember everything that we are, because we're going to keep that memory alive in them and through them, through creating that environment. Okay? So what we do and what you do defines the generations next. What generation are you helping to find? Some people don't have much. There's a 35-year-old woman in Detroit right now that works at a restaurant that has nothing tying her there, no friend, no just her mom and her sister, and no kids and no future generations. You know, she has nothing. So what is her message? What is she leaving to the world? And I'll argue that each and every one of us, because of who we are, we have a message regardless of whether or not we have generations that follow us. We have a message for the generations that follow us, regardless of whether or not we plant them or not. But we become the impressions and the principal author of truth for the children that come after us. They become the product of our experience. And there are so many voices in the world compelling us today to live for ourselves, because after all, we only live once. Contrary to this popular worldview, God is telling us to live today for the ones that come tomorrow and for each other. I say we need to bind ourselves together, become one with each other, make ourselves a people that experience this life for the purpose of teaching and authoring truth for those young ones that come after us. We're birthing a people here at this well that we've dug. This well, we're birthing a people. We've dug a well here at Rosh Pinah. And this people is going to leave a mark, whether it's in this city or wherever it may be. We're leaving a mark. And we have to bind ourselves together. We have to be as one and never forget the experiences that we've had. Learn from each other's experiences, but understand that there's one path that we're all on, and that is the advancement of the kingdom of God. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. It's the community. It's not the individual. It's the community that matters. And the community is built upon the faith and understanding and knowledge to know that Yeshua HaMashiach is coming again to establish a throne in Israel that all will come to worship Him at. This is our message. And this is what we're building. This is the well that we have. Everyone will be affected by it. I'll tell you, Paul, for instance. Paul leaves Shabbat every week, and he fills a bucket with water, and he takes that water out to people in the world. He'll make 15, 20 copies of a teaching, and he'll go and find people. That's water in a bucket that he's taken from a well. Okay? He's taken water in a bucket from this well, and he's going to go give somebody Mayim Chaim, living water, that they can drink from. Now, they might say that water's bitter because it might not be what they want to hear. Or they might say that this water is awesome because it's something that they want to hear. They may never come to this well. They may never visit the well. But you know what? They've got the water from the well. And the message has been heard. The message you bring, it's the same thing. You bring a message, the message of a kingdom, but you bring it from a different vantage point. Jack and Peggy, they travel the country more than most everyone on vacations and enjoy themselves. And they take with them a message of goodness, right? The feet of those who bring tidings of great joy. How beautiful. Man navu, al he harim, ragle, mevaser, mashmiat, Yeshua. I mean, it's what they're doing when they travel. And we know that when they're home, they come back to the watering well. This is the well. And then they take the water to the world around them. And we believe that and trust that because they're one with us. They're our family. Each and every one of you are the same way. You come to the well, and we all are here together in a mission to advance the kingdom of God, whether that's for our children's sake or for each other's sake. That's what matters. With that being said, I'll end with Matthew chapter 5. It says that ye have heard that it hath been said that thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh the sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and he sends rain on the just and on the unjust. That's probably the hardest verse in the Scriptures. That's the most difficult verse to understand in the Bible. He sends rain on the just and on the unjust. and the sun shines on the just and on the unjust. How? It just does. Wrestle with God with that. It is what it is. But, for if you love the same, for if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans do the same? You know, publicans are politicians. Don't be like a politician. Don't act as if you love your brother and really hate him. Don't act as if you hate your enemy and really or love your enemy and really hate him. You have to love both the same as God does. If you salute your brothers only, what do you more than others? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. It's totally impossible. But it's the striving. We have to strive for perfection. Perfection means that we fight the fight. We take our experiences that we've gone through, we share them with each other, and we grow and we expand. We do not repeat our histories, but we build the future for our generations to come, to be solid, to be on ground and a foundation that Yeshua is establishing. Amen. It's our duty to praise the Master of all, to ascribe the greatness of the author of creation, for he made us unlike the nations of the lands. He's not placed us like the families of the earth. He's not made our portion like theirs and our lot like all their multitudes. And when bend the knee and bow and acknowledge our thanks before the King over kings, the Holy One, blessed be he. He stretches out heaven and establishes the foundations of earth, and the seat of his glory is in the heavens above, and on the presence of his power is in the most exalted heights. He's our God, there's none other. True is our King, there's nothing beside him. As it is written in his Torah, you shall know this day and take to your heart that the Lord, he is God, in the heavens above and on the earth below, there is